It's Friday, and that means it's time for another edition of JT's Bang Bang Plays. I'm JT Hayes. Run Pure Sports at JT Hayes Jr. on Twitter.com. A beautiful 14-game slate on tap for Friday night. But first, it's August, and surprise, surprise, the New York Mets are in the news. As you guys know, one of my favorite franchises to talk about, this absolutely hideous disaster of a franchise. What a couple of weeks it's been for them. Beginning with the trade deadline. Their acquisitions at the trade deadline, starting with Rich Hill, left-handed pitcher that they picked up from the Tampa Bay Rays. If the Rays are calling you about a trade, particularly a pitcher, the correct answer is to politely laugh and hang up the phone, because the Rays are so good at player development and player evaluation that honestly I think they should be forbidden from trading with other teams, but not so for the Mets. Decided not to wonder why the Rays, almost assuredly headed to the playoffs, would want to trade one of the pillars of their starting rotation, who most recently they had relegated to throwing only 50 or 60 pitches per start. No, I'm sure absolutely nothing's wrong with Rich Hill, so a pickup there for the Mets. The other pickup, a little bit better, I would agree, in Javi Baez, a nice player from the Chicago Cubs, but he plays a position where the Mets already have 4 or 5 other guys who play the same position, including Frankie Lindor, who will be back in a couple of weeks. So a bit of an underwhelming trade deadline for the New York Mets. And then they had the 10th pick in the amateur draft, and they were excited. The Mets were very excited that Kumar Rocker, pitcher from Vanderbilt, fell to them at number 10. He'd been predicted to go as high as number 2 or number 3 behind Jack Leiter, but no, the Mets, the only team apparently picking in the top 10 who needed medical tests to understand that there was a problem with a pitcher's arm when he loses 7 to 9 miles an hour off of his fastball in college. So they don't sign Kumar Rocker. It's a waste of a pick, and they go back to next year's draft, see if they could have a little bit better luck. Then they go into Miami. They lose 3 of 4 to the Marlins, who are trying so desperately to lose that they traded everything that wasn't nailed down at the trade deadline. Terrible bullpen implosions for the Mets this week. If you can get good money on it now, book it. The Mets, they're done. They're not going to the playoffs this season. On to tonight's 14-game slate. And I don't have to tell you, because if you're like me, you've been playing daily fantasy sports almost every night. And you know that if you faded the higher price pitchers, if you faded the more highly projected pitchers on any slate over the course of the last week, you were doing pretty well. Pitching been pretty volatile since the Major League Baseball crackdown on substances, but also I think it has something to do with the workload of some of these pitchers. Remember, last year, a 60-some game season and playoffs, so a lot of these guys are throwing a lot more pitches, a lot more innings than they have in a couple of years. So still, I'm going to look at a couple of higher price pitchers on this slate that we can talk about, and then one cheap guy that nobody's going to want to roster but is in a really good spot. And let's get started right off the bat. The San Francisco Giants go into Milwaukee to take on Corbin Burnes. Corbin Burnes has been absolutely outstanding in almost every start this year. He's been downright dominant. He's just 10K on DraftKings. He's got a 36% strikeout rate. And San Francisco, over the course of the last 3 weeks, has a 29% strikeout rate. They may also be without Mike Yastrzemski. So Burnes at 10K is someone that, as of right now, I'm looking at. Again, these things could change. That's why you should always, if you're not already, be a member at Run Pure Sports. Get into the Discord, take in the playbooks, the core plays, and use code RPSNFL15. With football season coming up, you know we're going to be all over that. That gives you 15% off of your subscription payments for life. Not just for the first payment, not just for a couple of months, for life. You lock in your rate, you get 15% off that rate. RPS NFL 15. Another guy, you've heard me talk about him. It seems like I play him every slate, and I don't. It's just that you've got these teams in the American League West that are just so beatable right now. The Los Angeles Angels obviously planning for next season. And then the Texas Rangers. Man, how about the Texas Rangers? Dylan Bundy goes into Globe Life Field in Texas and shuts them down. 6 1/3 innings pitched, 6 strikeouts. It was so bad that Texas rookie stud Adolis Garcia was seen after the game trying to book a raft back to Havana. Chris Bassitt, the Bassitt Hound, 9.8K on DraftKings. He's got a 25% strikeout rate on the season. Texas, over the last 3 weeks, has a 26% strikeout rate, a weighted run creation of 69, and just a 158 ISO. So I think Chris Bassitt, it's rare for me to say I'm going to lock in a pitcher, but I'm going to be well over the field on Chris Bassitt tonight in a matchup against the powerless Texas Rangers at home in a good ballpark. Talked about a cheap pitcher no one's going to roster. No one's going to roster this guy. Actually, when I bring up this guy's name, and I'm going to do it today because I'm going to be on the live stream later on, the free show, Swing for the Fences at 4:30, I know that whoever's on with me is going to laugh. I know they are. But here's what he's done in his matchup this season. In 3 outings this year, in this same matchup, 19 and a third innings pitched, 17 strikeouts. Yes, 7 earned runs, but there's 3 places where Mike FOLTYNEWICZ pitches well. I should say 3 situations. He pitches well at home normally, he pitches well in Oakland Coliseum, and he pitches well against the Oakland A's. And at just 4.9K on DraftKings, he's too tempting. He's too tempting. I'm going to have to do it. I'm going to have some Mike FOLTYNEWICZ. I think he can get us to 15 to 17 fantasy points in what I expect to be a low-scoring game. It's going to be cooler. I know people, the weather Nazis out there, are going to be a little concerned because it's going to be 65, 68 degrees. That's not freezing, but it's going to be cooler. It's going to be a big park, and 4.9K is too cheap even for a pitcher as volatile as Mike FOLTYNEWICZ. Now that we have our pitching set, and really that is pretty much going to be where I look for pitching tonight, what are we doing for offense? Obviously a 14-game slate. There's a lot of temptation. There's a lot of good spots. There's a Coors slate tonight. There's a Coors game. Of course, it features a pretty good pitching matchup. Sandy Alcantara for the Marlins, and then German Marquez again against the Marlins team that, even though the strikeout rate appears to be high, they just seem to get to pitchers a little bit too much for my liking to bring down that ceiling, especially in the environment of Coors. So I'm probably not going to look to Coors for pitching or offense tonight. Again, things could change, but I think we've got a really good spot in, once again, seems the place we're going a lot more frequently since the trade deadline, Yankee Stadium. The New York Yankees against Marco Gonzales. Little Marco, as some people call him. I don't think he stands a chance tonight against this newly refurbished Yankee lineup. I'm going to go with Giancarlo Stanton, who's too cheap in this matchup at 4.2. Aaron Judge, 5.2K. I think both of these guys have the power to get to Marco Gonzales. And then Kyle Higashioka, just 3.0. Like the Yankees stack here, either a full stack or a mini stack quite a bit. I think on these 14-game slates, it's important to try and lock in upside, power upside, and the Yankees have that in spades. You could even flesh this little mini stack out with Gallo and Rizzo, because I don't think Marco Gonzales is going to last very long in this game tonight in Yankee Stadium. Other spots to like, there's a ton of other spots to like, but there's one that I think is going to go a little bit under the radar because of how the team has been playing. They did put up some runs in Toronto, actually made the game against Steven Matz much closer after Matz left the game, but they get to face Matt Manning tonight for Detroit. Manning, he wasn't doing so well in the minor leagues, and they called him up out of necessity just because they were simply out of arms. He's got an expected ERA of 4.98, an xFIP of 5.54, giving up more than a home run per 9 innings. And listen to this. His numbers against right-handed hitters. He's allowing a 250 ISO. He's allowing a 425 weighted on-base average. That's just against right-handed pitching. Right-handed hitting. So we're going to go with Franmil Reyes, 5.2. Harold Ramirez at 2.8. Miles Straw in the leadoff spot. He should be in the leadoff spot at 2.6. Good little player. Did pretty well for Houston this year and then made the move over to Cleveland at the deadline. And of course, if I'm stacking the Indians, I am not going to leave Jose Ramirez out of that stack. He should be back in the lineup tonight at 6.4K on DraftKings. That does it for JT's Bang Bang Plays for Friday. Again, a beautiful 14-game slate. If you're not already a member, get over to runpuresports.com or runpurebets.com. We'll have a bunch of bets up there. Actually, are already a number of bets up for tonight's slate, and there'll be more throughout the day. The bet side has a Discord. Of course, we've got our daily fantasy sports Discord as well. and get yourself prepared for football season. Put yourself in the best position to win and do well in daily fantasy sports. Use code RPSNFL15. That gives you 15% off of your subscription payments for life. Run pure in those contests tonight. Let's see the screenshots once again.